Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the NRG Series Indianapolis. I'm your host, Mason Drew, my co-host here, Devin O'Donnell, better known as Doomwake, and we are back with round number 3 of our Pioneer 10K Showdown. One of our lucky players today is going to be going to our Players Championship at the end of the year, $25,000 in prizes. Devin, are you excited to see this round?
Absolutely. We have not only a phenomenal player on feature match for you today, Cain Rianhard, who was a runner-up at Pro Tour March of the Machines. We have a classic Pioneer matchup. Izzet Phoenix against
Yeah,
Mono
those
White
players are
Humans.
shuffling up, so let's go down there real quick as we can talk about it. But yeah, like you mentioned, Cain Rianhard got second place at Pro Tour March of the Machines, losing to Nathan Stoyer, probably a name you haven't heard of before, but trust they're okay at the game. And then we have Travis Trozer here on Mono White Humans. Traditionally, a pretty good matchup for humans.
Yeah, so the humans deck with access to cards like Thalia, Guardian of Thraben can really kind of stymie the early removal spells here from the Phoenix side of things. You know, every time you're like, if you don't have a removal spell on the spot for Thalia and you need to start cantripping into it, you basically just time walking yourself every single turn. You're spending 2 mana on an opt to try and find a cantrip, and then you also have stuff like Brave the Elements to protect your Thalia. So just a lot of good things here for Travis.
Mm-hmm. This Phoenix deck is very special to Cain. Cain has played this deck a lot in Pioneer. I would say Cain sort of oscillates between like Phoenix and the Lotus Field as the go-to decks. Cain has a very wide range, but definitely has some preferences for this deck. Played it at Atlanta at the RC just last year, and is back to it here after the changes.
Yeah, Cain does have 4 copies of Sleight of Hand. We saw that on camera last round with Russell Lee. So Cain opting not to play the Picklock Prankster version. We've seen a couple of players adopt that, but Cain not going for that. So 4 copies of Sleight of Hand is really the main difference here. It looks like there's also a Thing in the Ice in the main deck here for Cain. Pretty good in this matchup.
Yeah, this is something that I know Cain and I both really agree on. I've talked about before is that Thing of the Ice, while it's a little clunky sometimes, it's just kind of a hammer in the matchups where it's really good. And having one in your main deck and sort of pre-boarding gives you a lot of game in matchups that normally you don't have a ton of game in. Like, let's say Mono Green, where, post boards are really good, but game one, you're kind of got a couple flyers and hope they don't have any of their reach creatures and your spot removal lines up well enough. But with these 10 cantrips now, you can consistently find this Thing in the Ice, and you're one of is not that big a deal. So do you see it?
Yep, looks like we have a Hopeful Initiate here for Travis. I stole your words.
No
there,
worries, you're all good. As we're going to see a Shocked in Steam Vents here from Cain.
Yeah, if you're Travis's side of things, Hopeful Initiate's probably not the one drop that you'd prefer to have, given that, you just want to kind of put pressure onto the battlefield as early as possible. You'd likely rather have something like, say, a Dauntless Bodyguard or perhaps even Recruitment Officer, but is able to, deploy Thalia if for some reason the game does not have a removal spell here. And, we can maybe get a counter on that Hopeful Initiate. Cain's going to opt in response here. So, there is a Fiery Impulse in hand, so choosing not to go after the Hopeful Initiate likely just wants to go main phase, Fiery Impulse, kill the Thalia. But then if you're in a position where Travis has something like Atlanta and Adeline, that could be a really backbreaking spot here for Cain.
Yeah, and this might be a spot too where Cain maybe is a little land light and just trying to fire off the cantrip now to hit that land drop. We'll have to see how the game develops there. But Cain definitely someone who's very methodical, and I would say that choice was pretty quick for Cain, which makes me think that Cain knew they were looking for something in particular.
Yeah, and if Cain does have something like, okay, we're going to main phase the Fiery Impulse, so like I said, Travis really looking for a land and an Adeline as a follow-up. That's going to be a lot of pressure here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're seeing that main phase Fiery Impulse there from Cain, probably to respect something like Brave the Elements. Obviously, very rough if your opponent has another Thalia, but, Cain trying to play around what they can expect. As we do see Luminarch Aspirant coming down and growing the Hopeful Initiate in for 2.
Yep, and then next turn, can grow the Hopeful Initiate even more, get it to 4 toughness, which means that won't be able to get got by something like another Fiery Impulse. We see here is a Ledger Shredder, and then likely going to follow that up with another removal spell, perhaps, maybe a cantrip.
Yeah, it looks like Cain has both Sleight of Hand and one of the red removal spells. Unsure which one it is. And it looks like, yeah, Cain is gonna just double checking, maybe try to figure out what they're gonna connive away if nothing else pops up. But yeah, it looks like Lightning Axe going after that Luminarch Aspirant, trigger connive on the Ledger Shredder.
And I can't quite tell, but I think that might be a Phoenix underneath the Lightning
Yeah,
Axe
it's
Mason.
red with a power and toughness box, so I gotta believe it. If not, we have some Oximagonus.
Yeah, what else could it be?
You know? God, Oximagonus, what a cool card. That'd be so sweet.
Yeah, I've also seen some. I haven't seen it quite yet, but I've been wondering if people want to play the Hearth Elemental in Phoenix, the one that you cost less and discard your hand, draw a couple cards. But in any case, right? Yeah, exactly. So we see Lieutenant here. Important, can get the Hopeful Initiate up to 3 power, although still can't quite attack past that Shredder this turn. So yeah, Travis missing that 3rd land drop a couple of turns. I do see a copy of Adeline, maybe even multiple Adelines in Travis's hand, but unfortunate for Travis, is not able to find that 4th
and
land.
Cain taking advantage of that, casting Piece of the Puzzle here. This is a spot where sometimes Piece of the Puzzle kind of roughen these matchups when you're on the draw against these aggro decks. And Cain only hitting Treasure Cruise here. Did get an Arclight Phoenix though, to be fair. But using that turn where Travis doesn't have another land drop to really maximize that, we see a Stormcarved Coast be the land for turn, and we're going to start delving.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate for Cain that they only found one spell off of the piece of the puzzle, but it was a pretty good one, right?
Yeah, it's a good one, Treasure Cruise, and you hit the Phoenix, so it's like eventually you're probably going to get it back as well. Plus, this is the thing we talked about last round with Russell Lee, right? Sort of your Piece of the Puzzles act as like dark rituals when it comes to your delve spell. So even though you missed, right, even if it wasn't a Phoenix, it did decrease the Treasure Cruise by 1 more. So you get some amount of value. And that's why this card is such a sacred cow for a lot of players. We see players like Cain who know about the Prankster and are choosing not to play it because the Piece of the Puzzle is just so powerful on turn 3 in this deck.
It looks like Travis still unable to find that 3rd land, picked up a copy of Recruitment Officer. I do see a Brave in Travis's hand. So, with Cain's only creature being blue, could maybe set up for something like that. He's just going to go for a Luminarch Aspirant this turn. And I believe the leftovers are Brave, Adeline, Recruitment Officer. So, yeah, kind of a weird position. Doesn't really have a good attack into the 3/5 Ledger Shredder. Yeah, we can go counter on there, pass the turn, maybe try to set up for some sort of Brave Assault. But if Cain is able to get those Phoenixes back and is able to present a blue creature blocker and a red creature blocker, it's going to be really hard for Travis to convert that Brave.
Also, Cain hand sort of stocked right now, has 4 cards in it. So even if we don't, end up bringing back a bunch of Phoenixes, we're going to be able to probably interact with something or set up for Galvanic plus Temporal Trespass, which is a great way to sort of close the door against anybody. And one of the big appeals of the Phoenix deck is you get to play these interactive games. Your deck is so cheap and so efficient. You find your cards, but also you randomly have a combo kill because if you Galvanic and Temporal Trespass and take 2 extra turns in a row, that's often enough to win with just a couple Arclight Phoenixes in the late game. So we do see Piece of the Puzzle and hit Temporal Trespass and Lightning Axe.
Yeah, Cain actually discarded a Temporal Trespass last turn, so, was able to find the 2nd copy. There are 2 copies in the deck alongside 2 Galvanic iterations, so, like you mentioned, Cain wanting to try and set up that Spikefield Hazard going to take out the Luminarch Aspirant. It's also going to trigger Connive on the Ledger Shredder. Cain, I don't get a good look, but okay, I see a Steam Vent, so if Cain has a 1-mana spell, can go ahead and go Steam Vents, deploy that 1-mana spell, get those Phoenixes back, and, I talked about blocking last turn. Cain might even just want to start attacking.
Yeah, I was going to say, Cain also has Galvanic in hand, so we have the Temporal Trespass locked up, and if Cain can do anything to bring back these Phoenixes, we're going to see an attack for 9 down to 11 for Travis, and then we take 2 turns and it's over, as Lightning Axe is going to go after that Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yep, get back 2 Phoenixes, attack for 9, and then even without the Galvanic iteration, this is just lethal with the Temporal Trespass Mason, right? Just, 9 to 11, take 9, take another turn, and yeah, this is going to likely be the end of the game here next turn. Travis finally finding that 3rd land for Adeline, but probably a little bit too late.
Yeah, needs Brutal Cathar here, but unfortunately just a handful of Resplendent Cathars, which is normally not something your deck complaining about, but here just won't be enough. Yeah, as you see Cain sort of be like, hey, I've got 2 turns, and Travis is like, oh, no doubt, let's pick him up.
Heading to the booth.
But that's going to do it for game number 1 there. Really exciting stuff there, and, despite being stuck on 2 lands, Travis did put up sort of a good showing, and a very reasonable keep too, right? We had a lot of really strong cards in the dark, and honestly, a lot of cards that lined up well. We just missed on the 3rd land probably for 1 turn too many.
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine if we find that third land there for Travis right away, you're able to go one drop into Thalia into Adeline, and then just it kind of snowballs from there. But what do we have in the
Yeah,
sideboard
so
here
for
for
Travis, we have
Travis?
4 wedding announcement, 3 portable hold, 2 invasion of Gobakhan, 2 Thalia Heretic Cathar, 2 rest in peace, and 2 ossifications. Devin, what do you like against Phoenix?
Rest in peace. Give me those. Those are. I heard that they're pretty good against graveyard decks, Mason. I'm not 100% positive, but I think we want to go towards those. Past that, I would imagine wedding announcement. I'm not sure if that's where you want to go. Maybe ossification to take care of thing in the ice early on. Same thing. Maybe portable hole, but it's a little bit less flexible since it can't take out Phoenix. And I don't think I want the invasion. So maybe the ossifications and the rest in pieces. But past that, not a ton here that I think we want.
Yeah, they're kind of a classic situation of we don't want to sideboard too much in this matchup because our game one plan is still pretty good against them, and we don't want to dilute our main game plan. You can only get so many interaction spells in your deck, right? Speaking of interaction spells in your deck, though, let's check out Cain Rianhard's deck here real quick, as we have 3 Crackling Drake, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Brotherhoods, and 2 Mystical Dispute. Then 1 Abrade, 1 Aether Gust, 1 Negate, 1 more Thing in the Ice, and 1 more Treasure Cruise. What do you like out of the sideboard here for Cain?
So as you mentioned, Kane, this is not Kane's first rodeo, so likely going to be aware of the presence of something like Rest in Peace, and that's typically when you want to kind of sort of divert your plan a little bit and go towards these Crackling Drakes, because if you expect Rest in Peace and you expect that your Phoenixes and your Delve spells maybe are offline, you kind of want to pivot to this more of like tempo, kill your thing, slam a 10 power flyer. So likely wants to bring in the Drakes, the additional thing in the ice, and then these removal spells, the Brotherhood's Ends and the Abrade. I think those are all slam dunks. And like I said, probably wants to trim on some sort of the Delve interaction and maybe even, dare I say it, trim a couple of the Phoenixes.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. You could do that sort of thing. And, like post board, right? So much of this game is like, yeah, I'm going to interact a little bit. I'm going to then play like a Brotherhood's End maybe to like sweep up all the side stuff I didn't pick off. And then I stick like one thing that wins the game where like it's a thing in the ice that flips, right? So having the Crackling Drake sort of fits that plan of, big thing that wins the game on its own, replaces itself, blocks pretty well. So kind of a card underrated in this matchup, I think, by a lot of players. So I definitely love your idea of bringing that in here. But speaking of things that are going on, Devin, I want to quickly talk about what else is going on. Tomorrow, don't forget, we're going to have a Team Modern event where all the players are going to qualify for another championship. That's exciting. But also in Madison, November 25th through the 26th, we're going to have our last event of the year. So this is our last one for the calendar year for 2023. It's pretty exciting. It's going to be a modern 10K showdown on Saturday, November 25th. You win that, you go to our Players Championship at the end of the year. Let's be honest, that's why Kane's out here, right? Kane wants to hang out with the homies, going to play a team event tomorrow. It's going to be fun. But Kane's got a little taste of victory this year, Kane's used to winning, but kind of likes the paper winning now besides Modo, and is trying to make it to our Players Championship and see if they can win the showdown today and just make it, because they do live sort of far away from NRG, but made out for this weekend. That could be you in November at Madison. So go out and play Modern, get your beanstalks going. And then Sunday, we have a 5K Pioneer trial as these players are finishing up mulliganing here. Now, Devin, post board, we got a lot of cards in for both players. The things are changing up. What position do you like?
So I know we talked about we like the human side of things game one. I actually kind of feel like Kane improves a lot more in the post-board games. So Travis does have those kind of graveyard haymakers in the form of Rest in Peace, but Kane has come prepared for that. We got a couple Thing in the Ices, the Crackling Drakes, and just a plethora of removal spells. So, if Travis is in a position where we're mulliganing pretty aggressively to something like a Rest in Peace, and Kane just, has a bunch of removal spells and a Crackling Drake, then I think I like Kane's position post-board. But like you said, I think it's still a really close matchup either way.
Yeah, it's going to be close either way. It's hard for me to bet against Kane, especially after post board. The matchup gets better, and we kind of stole game one, right? Like it was a good game, or whatever, but that's sort of the match the game you're supposed to normally lose in the matchup. So being up it makes me feel really good about both game 2 and 3. Kind of have one to give.
Right. So look at Travis's hand. I see a Brave the Elements. I saw a Recruitment Officer. I saw an alt art card. You're my go-to guy for alt art cards.
I didn't see the alt art card. Give me a little peek poo at it. I'll let you know what it is. I bet you it's a Thalia. There's a lot of alternate art Thalias.
Coppercoat Vanguard, I think there's one. There's the fancy version of Coppercoat, so it could be that as well. We do see a Recruitment Officer for Travis. Both players keeping 7. And looks like Cain, just the normal Phoenix stuff. Got a removal spell, a couple cantrips. Not much more you can ask for.
Yep. Did you see Travis here? Drawing. Yeah, I do think that is Coppercoat Vanguard. As it looks like we're going to be maybe playing another Recruitment Officer, holding up Brave the Elements if Cain tries to get a little frisky with the interaction.
I love this play. Not deploying the 2-drop here, just going to basically Travis is kind of in a position where he's just going to play off curve the entire game. Like you're going to play your 1-drop on turn 2, your 2-drop on turn 3, and just consistently hold that Brave up. It looks like we don't even have a 3rd land. So yeah, definitely like that play from Travis. And if Travis is able to find a 3rd land, slam the Coppercoat Vanguard, attack for 6, protect it with Brave, and put yourself in a really good position.
I love it. We are going to see Cain resolve Sleight of Hand here.
The proper sleight of hand, by the way.
Yes. Obviously, Cain has a lot of taste, class. Looks like we found an Arclight Phoenix off that sleight of hand.
The only other acceptable sleight of hand Mason is 7th edition, those are the ones that I own.
Oh, that's the lady with the sleight of hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A fun fact, when I was a kid, I apparently bought some magic cards. And when my mom moved to her house, I helped her move. And I found these old magic cards. So I had the World's decks. And I had foil sleight of hands I opened as a kid. I somehow opened 2. And so they look so sick. Anyways, I never get to play anymore. I'm always in the booth. Thalia's Lieutenant coming down. I want to play with my sleight of hand, Devin. That's really what it all comes down to. And this is a big attack here for Travis.
Yeah, getting 6 damage across here. Cain is going to go ahead and fire off a lightning axe, and we'll have to see if Travis wants to use the Brave here. Does. Okay. So just valuing getting into 6 points, putting Cain down to 10 and 7 power. Really any 2 additional creatures next turn, getting us really, really close to lethal. I see a 2nd Lieutenant in Travis's hand, and we already knew about that Vanguard. So, if there's no 3rd land and a Brotherhood's End here for Cain, the leftovers are really good for Travis.
Yeah, this is a really rough spot to be for Cain. Travis is the unenviable position of land is a good draw, which is never the place you want to be as the opponent against the aggro deck. And Cain kind of does need to have something like a bunch of spot removal spells here and hope that it's enough and like bring back the Phoenix to block. But we have to see how Cain's going to approach going at the turn. It looks like we do have something like Ledger Shredder, plus at least a Consider in hand to trigger the Connive. So a little bit of sculpting for Cain, but
Looks like Shredder acts here, and that's going to do a pretty good job because not only do you get to kill one of the creatures in the battlefield, but you also get to connive, potentially put a counter on the Shredder, and give yourself another good blocker next turn. And now, even if Travis draws that land number 4, say he deploys the Thalia's Lieutenant and the Coppercoat Vanguard, I know I'm not great at math, but I would see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess that would still be representing a lethal attack, I think, or maybe we're 1 short.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think with the land off the top, it's just about lethal. It has a double check here. But I'll say this, Cain connived into the Brotherhood's End. So this Thalia's Lieutenant actually potentially growing out of range would have been huge. But with not playing the Coppercoat Vanguard before, we're missing a little bit of damage. And Cain gets a chance to save a little bit of life here. Travis maybe playing around Brotherhood's End, doesn't realize actually maybe playing into it a bit better this way.
Yeah, I think the decision to not play the Coppercoat Vanguard was that we didn't want to trigger the Ledger Shredder. But at least if from my position, or at least if I'm in Travis's seat, I'm kind of under the assumption that Cain's going to get to trigger that Shredder next turn anyways. So if you think about it, you're giving your creatures an additional +1 power, and you're letting Cain put +1 power on the Shredder. So it's kind of a wash anyways. And like you said, Brotherhood's End now gets to kill that 3/3 Lieutenant where it otherwise wouldn't have if we had deployed that Vanguard.
Well, Devin, Twitch chat's saying that it's Thalia, Heretic, Cathar. I'm just going to say it. I thought it was Thalia, and I trusted you. And this is why I don't trust nobody. First my father, now this. As we see Brotherhood's End come on down and trigger the Connive.
Don't lie to me, Mason. I asked you, and you said you thought it was Coppercoat Vanguard. We can check the tape, okay?
The first thing I said is it's probably a Thalia. She has a lot of things. And then I saw the pink, and I agree. There's a Coppercoat with pink. And so I agreed with you. But now Twitch chat's telling me it's Thalia, and Twitch chat's never wrong, as you know from your profession.
That is true. Twitch chat is 100% never wrong. But you know what that is, Mason? That is a brotherhood's
Yeah,
end.
and that did Travis pretty wrong here as Cain has cleaned up the battlefield at 6 life, so a little dubious, but can start attacking now and put the pressure on Travis. And this is the kind of game plan, Cain wants. You just get your opponent to spend almost all of their cards as the Thalia Heretic Cathar comes down. I'll be honest, I've never seen that Thalia before. I don't think Cain has either. Cain's picking it up.
I've never seen that. Mason, I got to tell you, they print so many of these fancy arts these days. It's really, really difficult for us commentators. It's just
no one has it rougher
don't
than
know.
us. Like personally, you and I, but then commentators as a whole as well. I gotta say, and this is a good, I don't want to say we're in garbage time, but Cain's in a pretty good spot as we play as Crackling Drake. And there's tapped, notably because of Thalia, we draw a card. The one alternate I hate, and honestly, if I could do anything in Magic, Devin, I would ban these, are those inked black lands from Phyrexia Albi one. You just
don't even get me started on those.
You can't tell what you can't tell what they are. And
no, you can't.
They're very thick. I can always cut to them in my opponent's deck. I'm like, what is going on here? Anyways, Luminarch Aspirant.
Even if we were streaming in 4K, we still would not be able to determine whether what those lands are when they're played. So
I don't think a government satellite could.
No.
Like it's impossible. The technology
face
doesn't
recognition
exist.
Software.
Yeah, and we do see this Luminarch Aspirant kind of a great draw here because now Thalia is big enough to actually eat the Ledger Shredder here in combat. So if Cain takes his attack, that means Brave the Elements will be a lethal draw off the top, and Cain does take it, valuing the Ledger Shredder's body and the ability to connive a little more than the 4 life here, as we do see Cain start off with the pieces of the puzzle.
With Travis at 18, I gotta wonder, Mason. I don't know how close we are to lethal with this Crackling Drake, but it can't be that far off, right?
It can't be, and that's another Phoenix hit the graveyard. And I mean, so also you've got to be worried if you're Travis. Cain could have just took 2 lightning axes, and you have 2 premium threats on the board and didn't take them. Yeah. So it can't be a good sign. And lightning axe also, as we trigger the Connive here on Ledger Shredder, put some more spells in the yard. I imagine if this isn't lethal, we're at our opponent's at 2 or 3 life. It's gonna be a ton.
Well, you mentioned the Phoenix too, so we already have if you count the Phoenix and the Shredder, that's 6 power. With Travis at 12, we only need 12 spells. Then I think 7 in the graveyard. Or no, it looks like Cain's delving. Okay, not quite 7 spells in the graveyard. But yeah, if that's 6 power from the Drake the Phoenix and the Ledger Shredder. Oh, 2 Phoenixes, that's 9 power. So we only need 9 spells. I got to imagine we're at 9 spells.
Yeah, if we're not, we're dangerously close. You have to wonder too. I mean, yeah, the way Cain was moving and didn't pick up the second lightning axe to guarantee kill the Luminarch Aspirant and make it so you can't die. Yeah, it has me thinking Cain had it won, and that's going to do it for this round. Congratulations to Cain Rianhard. We are going to give you our backup future match, so stay tuned. But kind of a masterclass in the Izzet Phoenix there.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Cain has been playing this deck a ton, knows it inside and out. Every single, is going to eke out every single percentage point. And sleight of hand, really new addition to the deck. And as we've seen it now a couple of times on camera, we talked about the added consistency that it brings to the table, just being able to find those lightning axes when you need them and your threats when you need them. And this Phoenix deck looks really, really good, Mason.
Yeah, I agree. We'll go to the backup feature match there. Cain is, kind of my pick to win the tournament today. I think Cain's got the fire on top of it in sort of Cain's format too. So we're going to go down to our backup feature match, but not surprised to see the Izzet Phoenix there win that match. But our backup match is actually Benji Solomon. So we see here a bunch on the NRG series playing 5-color control at 2-0 versus Casey Rybrak on another Izzet Phoenix deck. We're going to have to see how this one goes. And we've seen a lot of Phoenix today. Devin, how do you like the 5-color control matchup against Izzet?
So, Izzet Phoenix tends to typically prey on decks that have small creatures because there's a lot of fiery impulses, lightning axe. This 5-color deck doesn't really have a lot of small creatures, Mason. There's some Sylvan Caryatids. Those do not die to the removal spells. And then we're kind of parlaying that into a Bring to Light package. So Bring to Light being able to access things like Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, Valky, God of Lies, which usually end up being Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. And then also, notably, there is a Slaughter Games in the main deck. So if we're able to resolve Bring to Light, we can maybe Slaughter Games for our Arclight Phoenix. And I do think this should be a relatively good matchup
Yeah,
here for Benji.
historically, decks like Niv to Light were very good matchups for Izzet Phoenix, because even though the opponent had a bunch of removal, they didn't have any clock or way to really win, right? Like the 6/6 in play would just die with those removal spells that were hanging out. They didn't provide enough value, and you could just sit there and sculpt and eventually go like Galvanic, Temporal Trespass, bring back my birds. Like you have to have all of it with all your mana up all the time. Just too much to ask. This 5-color control like the Benji here actually has ways to win the game, like you just mentioned, and high impact threats that you can't just ignore and sit around. And cards like Up the Beanstalk as well add a lot of extra consistency to this deck that it was lacking a little bit before.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, I'm wondering if Benji is able to resolve Slaughter Games in a game 1 situation. I wonder if we just name Temporal Trespass.
It makes it both seem very reasonable. Hall of the Storm Giants is like, it's funny. I've played a lot of Phoenix qualified for the Pro Tour, playing it last year in Atlanta, and I think 90% of my wins come from Hall of the Storm Giants. So it's just like trade a bunch, take 2 turns, activate. That's 14. You're dead. So we'll have to see how Casey's going to go about it here, because taking Temporal Trespass does turn that off in this matchup.
Yeah, we get a little cantrip action for Casey. I'm pretty sure that's a sleight of hand, Mason. I'm gonna go with
that.
that.
I got you. That's the full art one from Wild Veldrans. Another one comes out.
Yeah, just more of me yelling at old man yelling at clouds about these full art, Mason. But we see a Triumph. I know that is an Esper Triumph. We finally get to play the Triumph game, but although Benji doesn't have any fancy Triumphs yet.
Yeah, Rafine's Tower into Sunpetal Grove.
Sorry, did you call it Rafine's Tower? I believe it's called Esper Triumph, Mason. I think that's the correct term.
No, sorry. It's Rafine's Tower. I just want Papa Cedric Phillips to be proud of me. And so if you're watching, Cedric, let me know that you're proud of me. I really need validation in my life. Anyways, we draw for the turn after a piece of the puzzle goes off. Didn't find anything too crazy there. Fable the Mirror Breaker, speaking of crazy stuff.
Yeah, Fable here for Benji. Was able to maybe loot away some cards that we're not wanting to find our powerful cards. Yeah, really just kind of players just, exchanging back and forth. Both players really can just kind of looting through their deck, trying to find their engine. Looks like we have a Treasure Cruise resolving here for Casey. It's pretty good. Exiling the entire graveyard. No Phoenixes to, speak of quite yet.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to let you in on, Devin, I know you don't like playing blue-white control or like Lotus Field. Like those are kind of things you don't super love or don't love super commentating. Cantrips make me lose my mind. I get so bored playing them and watching them. But it is impressive because they are so high skill, especially early in the game, right? It's so hard to know exactly what you want.
All right, so Director, if you're hearing me right now, make sure we get an Izzet Phoenix mirror match on camera next round, and we can go from there.
Great. I can go to sleep and you can handle it all, as we do see Omnath come down. Oh, into the Triumph, into gaining the life.
Ketria Triumph, right?
Yeah, that is the Teamer one. It's Ketria. Rogren is the Jeskai one. Know that one from our 4-color days. Rest in peace.
Okay, would you be okay if I called it Rafine's Triumph instead of Rafine's Tower?
It is closer. And it gets the idea across too, because I don't even know if the average person knows Esper these days. You know what I mean?
That's true. That is a good point.
Yeah, I don't
Kids
know.
These days.
Yeah. Is this my Rakdos Evoke arc? As we do see a piece of the puzzle resolve and get 3 lands in the graveyard.
What you're saying is that Triumphs were the real scam the entire time.
Unironically hate Triumphs. So yes. Triumphs are high on my I wish we could take it back list. Higher than Solitude Grief, I'll tell you that. As we do see Treasure Cruise coming down, drawing 3 cards here for Casey Ryback.
Treasure Cruise number 2. Casey is definitely not short on drawing a lot of cards. This Phoenix deck is quite good at doing that. But sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, it has a tendency to kind of spin its wheels a bunch. Isn't really able to generate a lot of threats if you don't have those early Phoenixes. And we kind of see that going on here in this game.
Yeah. We'll have to see if Benji's cruising for a bruising or not, but he is flipping that Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, untap, unchecked Omnath. We have something like a Fable Passage can generate a boatload of mana. Looks like just a stomping ground. Fetch land's not that prevalent in Pioneer, but Benji does have 4 copies of the only one that you can play, which is Fabled Passage. We're seeing up the beanstalk here. Not a ton of bean action in Pioneer, but Benji does have, unfortunately for us, only 2 copies of Up the Beanstalk, but not quite as good in Pioneer, but you don't have access to those elementals.
Yeah. Still kind of nice as a cantrip and very strong with Bring Delight, which is sort of the big appeal. But Benji right now sort of using it as a way to smooth out as we play the Glyph Weaver on the creature mode, which is actually kind of nice here against Lightning Axe.
Right, especially, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that's a legendary creature. Let me just pull it up here. It is not. So, if Benji is able to untap with Fable the Mirror Breaker, let's say Casey, goes for a removal spell on Fable, you could even go copy the Glyph Weaver, sacrifice it, give the Fable indestructible, and kind of have, keep that engine going where you don't even have to lose the original Glyph Weaver.
Yep. Looks like Casey is going to start with an Opt. Casey hasn't cast a lot of cantrips this game, so really wants to sculpt the hand a bit more.
Yeah, definitely not. Honestly, Mason, you can never have enough cantrips.
Yeah, you can never have enough cantrip. No, jokes aside, it really is a lot going on there. Ooh, the pretty Arclight Phoenix there from the Magic 30 Advent Calendar.
Big fan of those. I love those Arclight Phoenixes.
Oh, so that promo you're okay with. Okay, as we do see another Lightning Action response to the sacking of the Glyph Weaver.
Only certain ones.
That's fair. We all have favorites. This is going to allow the Arclight Phoenix to come back this turn, so we are getting a little bit of pressure going on.
Was able to take care of the Omnath as well. Ooh, kill your Phoenix, draw a card. Thank you very much. Okay, so you hate cantrips, but Leyline Binding plus Up the Beanstalk, that's a cantrip. Where are we at on that?
So my thing is, cantripping, the act of drawing a card, I am fine with because it is quick, and for the viewer at home, it doesn't take very long. When you are casting your cantrips, it is very cool, but as a commentator, it's very hard for me to not only see what you're doing, but to talk about it, and it is you just staring at your card. So Ponder is my arch nemesis. And Brainstorm is my other arch nemesis. But, Beanstalk is fine. It's quick. It gets the job done. We move on with our day. And speaking of the job done, Fable the Mirror Breaker, bam, attack for 2.
Get in there. So I guess what we need is we need to reprint Up the Beanstalk. So every time, instead of drawing a card, you just use Scry 1, right? Or Scry 1, then draw a card, I guess. You opt every time.
Sorry, my brain's breaking. Yeah, they just made down the Beanstalk, but it's Scry 1 when you cast a spell with 5 or less mana value. There you go. That would be my personal nightmare.
What are we looking here for what are we looking here if you're in Casey's spot? We gotta be kind of try to find some pressure here. Surprisingly, we've gone through a lot of our deck and have really only been able to muster up 1 copy of Arclight Phoenix so far.
Yeah, we're looking for Phoenix, I think, and we have 2 Galvanics in our graveyard. So setting up something like Galvanic and then Temporal Trespass is pretty high on the list, I think, of things you want to do. Galvanicing something like a pieces of the puzzle would be a great way to find more spells to play this turn and find your Phoenixes. It looks like we are just going to Galvanic a Trespass. That's going to be 2 turns. I talked about this being a really hard to beat play pattern for these 5-color decks. But that's typically because things like Arclight Phoenix are going along with it. And normally you can just sit there forever and not worry about that being a problem. So looks like Casey sort of firing off a little bit sooner, maybe due to things like Slaughter Games being something he expects from Benji. As we piece of the puzzle and whiff, we do hit an Arclight though.
Oh, he just straight up whiffed that. Was it 4 lands and a Phoenix? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just that one's rough. And we mentioned before, right, in the earlier rounds, that's normally fine. Your Delve spells are able to be subsidized later, but we've actually used almost all our Delve spells already.
Right, so 2 oh no, Casey doesn't even have a 3rd spell for that Phoenix. Yikes. We're gonna see Gigantha triggers Beanstalk. Of course it does. Why not?
The 9th card in hand.
Get it in there. Yep. As if companions weren't enough, Mason. They need to also draw a card.
I can see it now in the design meeting. They're like, yeah, we really want to support Gigantha. Do you think if we make this Beanstalk card, it'll be fine? And they're like, yeah, probably. Gigantha needs the help.
Sure. All right, which trial was that Benji just discarded?
Rogren.
Incorrect.
What? Oh, it is
Ketria.
Damn.
Wow.
You got me.
Chat, mark it down. Flip it and ship it.
Today. Oh, my goodness. This is a blemish on my record I'll never recover from. I did. I went like
Ladies
a
and
year.
gentlemen, we got him.
I had like a year of commentary where I was really good. I got the one wrong in chat. Now this Arclight Phoenix Hardcast.
I'm wondering if you did it on purpose, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But anyways, we have a, looks like a second binding. Man, binding draw card feels so good.
Well, Fiery Impulse to take down the
take
Arclight Phoenix.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of where you wanted the
Mm-hmm.
graveyard, and your Impulse is not doing too much else. Casey down to 12, though. This Giganta just getting in the red zone. That's going to be a relatively fast clock here.
Mhm.
You can see, and Benji at 26 was able to gain a bunch of life from that Omnath. So even if Casey can put both of those Phoenixes into play, it's going to be really sort of difficult to assemble enough of a clock to get the game over with before that Giganta crosses the finish line.
Yeah, and we do see Casey firing off a Consider here, just hoping to chain enough cantrips to bring back the Phoenixes. But we use so many in the early turns, setting up as we do have a sleight of hand here. We put one hand, one to the bottom. It looks like we did draw at least a third spell. And it's a Consider. Maybe we can find this last Phoenix. And we do. Oh, sorry, no, we were just picking up the one from the yard. Okay, my bad. I saw the hand go to the graveyard. I'm like, oh, they did it.
Yeah, there should be one left, right? Because there's one other binding, two in play. Okay, yeah, one left in deck for Casey.
Yeah, very awkwardly, though, can't even get the pressure going because you need to be able to block. Yeah, and Chain of the Rocks takes down the first Arclight Phoenix.
And these exile removal spells, being able to, Leyline Binding, Chain of the Rocks, get rid of these Phoenixes for good. We saw it last turn, there was a binding on a Phoenix in case he was able to fire Impulse in response, but without access to that, those Phoenixes are gone for good now.
Yeah, and, Casey is going to need something wild to get out of this game because Benjamin has such a commanding position and so much life that, we mentioned Hall of the Storm Giants sometimes sort of secretly crosses the finish line in this sort of matchup, but with all these these Sylvan Caryatids and all this life, it's going to be really hard for Casey to actually win this game.
Yeah, and just, Casey was able to do just so much wheel spinning this game. I know your favorite thing in the world, just casting cantrip after cantrip after cantrip, and unfortunately for Casey, was just not able to find those Phoenixes early. When you play a deck like Arclight Phoenix, you are kind of at the mercy of your Phoenixes being in the top whatever amount of cards to be able to present that early pressure. And you find spots like this where if you simply just don't find them, it's really, really hard to close out a game.
Yeah, and Casey right back here plays the full 12 cantrips this weekend. We saw Cain Rianhard play 10, and we've seen players kind of go between 10 and 12. We're still kind of figuring out as a player base, but this is one of the downsides of it is when you're finding kind of the cards you want, and then in the mid game you draw your cantrip, and then you find the next thing you want. That's really good. But those extra two cantrips are just less things that interact, right? We have less we have less other pieces of interaction. We still have a bunch of lightning axes and stuff, but doesn't give you that ability to play a bunch of different game plans like we saw from Cain with like the main deck Thing of the Ice. As Chain of the Rocks is coming down here on the Ledger Shredder, and we're going to opt in response. Maybe try to find Super Spell Pierce. Counter unless you pay 32. And it looks like Casey.
Yeah, there was. I think is that a spell pierce?
See if Benjamin pays or not.
Wow, he paid. Yeah. I'm surprised.
And we are going to see Casey fall there, and that's going to do game number 1 for Benji Solomon. So kind of an impressive showing from that game there, Devin.
Absolutely. Yeah, like we said, I think the exile removal spell is just putting in a ton of work, and I think we're just about ready to go to game number 2.
Yeah, this is a time shifted match, so let's get back down to the feature match area and see game number 2 of this match. The penultimate game, potentially, of round number 3. Sleight of hand.
Turn 1 cantrip, Mason's favorite thing in the entire world.
Right, I was thinking about it. I think Casey cast 11 cantrips last game.
Well, maybe that's why he lost. He didn't cast the 12th.
Yeah. Been to consider. Just clearly, what are you doing?
Yeah.
We do see a Boseiju being played here to play Sylvan Caryatid. What do you think about Caryatid in these Brain Light decks?
Love it. It's a card that your opponent can't really interact with in any meaningful way, and it's able to not only fix your mana but also ramp you to stuff like Omnath and Bring to Light. I think it's a really good addition to these 5-color decks. I once told Claudio is a very big proponent of the 5-color Niv deck. It's basically if this deck doesn't have Carried on 2, it can't win. So
makes sense. your mana in and of itself is such a demanding thing that, mana dorks sort of getting you a little jump ahead, always nice, as we do see the Ketria Triumph get played, and then we play a Fable the Mirrorbreaker using Sylvan Caryatid. Saheeli, Sublime Artificer, though, maybe we can pull that one up on screen. Kind of does a young Pyromancer impression, if you know that card. Basically, anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, we're going to make a 1/1 servo, and then Saheeli can turn any artifact into a copy of target creature you control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, kind of more win conditions here for Casey, because we saw game one was Benji was just able to really exile all of Casey's threats, all those Phoenixes, and Benji's good. Benji has enough removal to where you kind of need to board into these alternate win conditions, stuff like Saheeli, even potentially Crackling Drake and things like that, and really diversify your threat base, because you have a lot of like sort of dead cards, like you don't want the Fiery Impulses, you're probably going to trim on Lightning Axes, and swapping those for additional threats just kind of lets you play this kind of sort of different game.
Speaking of swapping those for additional threats, we see Benji discard 2 Sylvan Caryatids off the Fable of the Mirrorbreaker Chapter 2 for 2 new cards. Benji doing his own cantripping, sort of, discard my.
The first carried, it's great. The second two, not so much. But that's why you want Fable.
Yeah, Fable doing good work here. As we do see Fable the Mirrorbreaker's token, the Goblin Shaman, attacking and making a treasure for a Benji. That is going to unlock like cards like Bring to Light this turn.
We'll have to see. Looks like we're getting an attack with the treasure Goblin token. Excuse me, treasure token coming in there, and I believe that is a second
that is
Fable.
The fancy art one. I unfortunately don't have those. I have the normal ones.
When I bought my Fables, I think those were actually cheaper. I got mine.
How cheap do you get your Fables? What's up?
I think like $8.
$1 release weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, fine. I don't feel smart at all.
I was setting you up to get God on stream. Oh, how did you, Devin?
Cotton
fell right for my trap card. You gotta work on your Edison game, buddy.
Absolutely destroyed. Chat bringing up whoever's in charge of picking the features loves Phoenix. Yeah, it's actually Mason, because Mason just cannot get enough of these. Look at the graveyard. There's 3 ops, a Consider, and a Sleight of Hand. This is Mason's just in heaven right now.
So the thing is, chat, is we have to pick our features a little ahead of time. So we pick certain decks, like maybe we picked Benji Solomon this round as a random example, who was playing 5-color, and then they queue into my worst nightmare Phoenix. Sometimes these things happen, as we do see Arclight Phoenix in the yard.
Let's be honest. You picked Casey. We all know.
It's true. I secretly love cantripping. I'm like a 5-year-old girl in preschool who makes fun of you because she likes you but doesn't know how to say it. That's me with cantripping. And wow, we resolved Treasure Cruise, and we don't have a 3rd spell to bring back the Arclight Phoenix.
That's kind of rough. Yeah, 2 mana. I mean, well, it kind of makes sense, because you did likely boarded out some number of those Fiery Impulses, but I guess maybe went a little bit too deep on the cantrips early. If we saved one of those for this turn, it's tough to say, whether you don't know how the game's going to progress in a couple of turns, so it does make sense to kind of utilize them early. We see 2 tokens trading for a Fable token, and we will have to see what Benji's follow-up is here. Maybe something like a Bring to Light for a Slaughter Games. Maybe take care of Phoenixes potentially. Looks like we're lining up 3 mana for perhaps a 3rd Fable.
Benji just loves that story of the Mirrorbreaker. Looks like we're actually playing. We're picking it up. Yes, it's a Chromos Seed Shark, a personal favorite of mine from March of the Machine. Maybe we can pull that one up here. Anytime you cast a non-creature spell, you incubate. Incubate are these 0/0 artifact tokens that you're incubating for the mana value equal to the spell you cast. So, for example, non-creature spell. So, Beanstalk going to make a 2. Leyline Binding, you're going to make a 6. So, a very cool card out of these decks, and a way to sort of grind to the mid game.
Yeah, and also with Bring to Light, Mason, you go Bring to Light for 5, and then you cast Tibalt, and Tibalt for 7.
And my Beanstalk drew 2 cards. Yeah, Chromos Seed Shark. Just a sick card, 2/4. And honestly, that 4th toughness really good here, making cards like Lightning Axe that are already pretty taxed in the matchup, taxed even more so. And, we can copy it with Fable the Mirrorbreaker, then start casting things and making a whole army of threats.
Oh boy, we untapped with Fable, flipping 2nd Fable, and the Seed Shark in play. Mason, you know what I want to see here? I want to see end step, make a bunch of Fable tokens, untap, use all of those to make a bunch of Sheet Sharks, and then play a Binding and make like 9
That would be
incubate
very
tokens.
sick. Is it?
I don't think we're going to see that. But...
Well, Benji's going to play Omnath. He's been kind of missing on land drops a little bit. Going to play Fail Passage. That's a good one to find. One of the few fetch lands actually playable.
Now we can go Omnath into another spell. Perhaps that Bring to Light that we talked about. Make some incubate tokens. I mean, you have to imagine this as far as Benji is just so far ahead here. There's just a million threats in the battlefield. Casey doesn't really have any sort of clock going on. And if you have to be pretty happy if you're a Benji
agree.
fan.
I got a question for you, Devin. What do you think about Chrome Host, Seed Shark?
I got an answer.
And Phoenix.
It's pretty good with the delve spells. Past that, you're making a bunch of ones because you have, I mean, depending on how many cantrips you play, you should be playing 12, I would assume. But just to make Mason upset. But yeah, it's not as good with the cantrips, good with the delve spells. It's probably okay as like a 1 or 2 of it. I don't know if it's better than the
I've never had that thought before until right now, and so I wanted to kind of talk about it on shows. We do see our recipes come down. We did make a copy of Chrome Host Seed Shark. That's 2 incubate 2/2s. Looks like we're attacking the air for 4 with the Chrome Host Seed Sharks. Knock Casey down. And this is a tough spot. You can beat Rest in Peace as the Phoenix deck pretty easily if your opponent doesn't have pressure on you out of these controlling decks with things like Crackling Drake, where honestly just hard casting your Phoenixes. But so much has happened, and Benji has pulled so far ahead in this game that Casey Ryback is in a really tough spot and is going to have to crawl back into this one.
Yeah, Rest in Peace with nothing in play is, you can still play through that. But Rest in Peace with 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 12, 14, what appears to be 16 power, that one's going to be a little tougher to beat.
Yeah. And getting more and more power.
Yeah, I'm not honestly, we like to talk about what does a winning sequence look like for Casey. I'm not even sure there is one, to be completely honest with you. I guess Iteration X, kill both of the Fables. Maybe you have to kill Omnath, Seed Shark, let Benji have the Fables, but it's no matter what you do, it looks like we're going to go after a Fable and a Shark, leaving with, that makes sense because the Fable can't copy the Omnath anyways, so, but I mean, still if we flipped all of those tokens, it's still 11 power, I think.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. Worth noting, the incubate tokens, when they transform to the other side, they stay on the battlefield, so they will not be summoning 6. So Benji can spend all of his mana next turn just animating those if he wanted to, and just start attacking. So a small little thing that does come up there. But Casey did start to do the comeback you talked about. I still think the best comeback is Benji's parents call and say he needs to come home immediately until he drops and gives you the win. But we're going to see an attack here for 10. Sorry, 11. There's one off screen. Excuse me.
Chump block the Omnath. Yeah, I can't tell if there's one off screen or if that's a treasure token. It might be a treasure, so it might be only an attack for 6.
Yeah, look from life totals it was 6.
Casey goes to 4. Benji does not really need a ton else here. Just going to go ahead and pass it back. And if you're in Casey's side of things, I mean, it looks like, if we go to the sideboard and we see, I can't imagine that that Brotherhood's End would ever come in here, but Brotherhood's End would be pretty good here. Clean up the Fable and both of the incubate tokens, but I can't imagine that card came in.
Yeah, it would be pretty impressive if it did, I would say. Also, I want to give big shouts to Benji here. Kind of far ahead, very easy to autopilot slam your spells, but Casey's got to have something crazy for you to lose. So why play anything? You're so far ahead on board. You have so much life. Yeah, if they have all that crazy stuff, prove it and beat these other cards too. It does look like we're going to cycle Rafine's Tower in a turn.
Cycling a couple Triumphs. We're just going to go right to combat. So maybe Lightning Axe on Omnath, second removal spell on Fable, block, take 2, go to 2. Looks like none of that's going to happen, and Benji is going to win.
Yeah, and really impressive stuff there. Like we talked about, maybe some of the older 5-color decks really kind of struggle in these matchups, but this newer age one is much better at doing that, and we saw Benji crush it. Moving on to 3-0 in our tournament. We still have 6 rounds of Magic left, though, and the next round is about to start. So we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Magic action, so don't leave.